As I mentioned at the top of the program, there was a celebration of Dr. Pat Robertson's life today in Virginia Beach. And we wanted to give some of the FRC team members who have worked with Pat over the years an opportunity to pay tribute to him.
I knew Pat Robertson for about 10 years when I served at CBN. It was a real joy to serve his vision, his leadership, his heart and passion.
Pat was very inspiring to work for. He really made you want to do your best, and you knew you were doing it because of a call from God. That was really central to Pat, and those of us who had the opportunity to work closely with him, we all saw that. There was no doubt about it.
I can attest to the impact it's had on others, because we've had many interns come through our doors from Regent, and then when they combined their experience as an intern here with their Regent education, they go out to change the world.
Even since I graduated from Regent University, I've been able to partner with former professors on joint research projects that were released both at Regent and FRC, so the legacy continues.
I think that Pat Robertson's legacy will be about what he infused in the people around him as much as the things that he created through CBN and Regent University and Operation Blessing.
He was always on mission for the things of God. And I truly believe that while he is enjoying the victory of his faith, that Pat is hearing those words that we all long to hear. Well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Well, that was several of our team members, Scott Hurley, that was Ariel DeTurco, Travis Weber, and others that were paying tribute to Dr. Robertson for his work. And I'm grateful for his building on the moral majority of the late Dr. Falwell. And Dr. Falwell was about influencing public policy really from the outside. But what Pat Robertson did is he challenged people to get into the arena. Now, following running for president in 1988, he launched the Christian Coalition that brought more Christians into the political arena. And I was actually a part of the Christian Coalition, serving as the chairman of the Baton Rouge chapter for a while. And so grateful for his life and his legacy and the work that continues. And that presence has staying power. I mean, a recent Gallup poll reveals an increase in the number of Americans identifying as social conservative. Now, what is behind that? Why is that occurring? Well, I think there's a foundation that people are standing on, but we're going to unpack that. Joining me now to talk about this, Meg Kilgannon. She is our Senior Fellow for Education Studies. She served in the Department of Education during the Trump administration. Meg, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always good to see you.
It's great to see you, Tony. I never met Pat Robertson, but he was an alumnus of Washington and Lee University, where I graduated, and I was at Washington and Lee University in 1988 when he was running for president as part of the second class of women to graduate from that university. And he really was really quite an amazing person. I heard someone very recently mentioned that during his campaign for president, he talked about offering a jubilee concept related to debt forgiveness, and even all these years later, that's such an interesting thing to remember about his candidacy, I think, and says a lot about the profound impact that he had on our politics and on our country.
When he ran for president, he obviously didn't win, but he didn't go away. He launched, working with Ralph Reed, someone I've worked with quite a bit, he launched the Christian Coalition, which began to organize Christians really for the first time to understand the political process and to run for office and to be involved in the kind of the machine of government, if you will. There's been some setbacks. Obviously, the policies we see in this country are troubling, especially when we see the aggressive nature of the transgender policy. But some significant information coming forth from Gallup research showing that First, there is an increase of about 5% over last year of the number of Americans who identify as social conservative. That's the first time we've seen that in over a decade, which is encouraging. But we also see that the support for same-sex marriage is declining in America as well, which would suggest to me that people are beginning to connect the dots between these agendas. You know, we were told, oh, this is just about live and let live, just being able to marry the one you love. They didn't realize that it was going to involve the indoctrination of their children, the infiltration of every media outlet in America. And is this America saying enough is enough and they're pushing back?
I think what we now have some practical experience with something that was always just a concept, right? The idea that two men could be married to each other or two women could be married to each other. This is the first time in human history that experiment of putting the sanction of marriage around that kind of a relationship or behavior had ever happened. And so you could talk a lot about what it could possibly be like in the run up to that eventual reality being imposed on the nation through the Obergefell decision. But now people could believe those stories in that narrative, right? But now we are seeing what is the reality of that situation and what is now required of us because of agreeing to that idea, that erroneous idea that two people of the same sex can actually be married.
So there's more context now that people realize that this is not just about two people. This is about all of society. It's about whether or not, different professions will be forced to affirm these same-sex unions. And I think probably the tipping point has been what's happening in the classrooms of America.
I think that's right, Tony. We saw this with the Masterpiece Cake Shop and the floral arranging the lawsuit that happened, where Christians were deliberately targeted to be forced to affirm a belief that they did not hold, right? And so in the grand scheme of things, what adults are required to do, we obviously disagree with that, but that may or may not capture the attention of the average person, right? But when you are proclaiming that you must teach children about what is involved in these kind of relationships and what these sex acts are, this is going to be something that's a bridge too far for many people, whether or not they support same-sex marriage.
Right.
There are people that we work with in organizations here around town who maybe don't take a position on marriage because they tacitly think that it's okay for same-sex marriage to happen. But even they will say, well, it's not okay to talk to parents about to children about these topics, and particularly not without their parents' permission, and definitely not behind their parents' backs. And so I think we're going to continue to see, the more they push this agenda, you're going to see more pushback, and rightfully so. We're not the ones who are being unreasonable in this.
Yeah. I'm going to play a clip of the Maryland governor, Wes Moore. He was on, this actually aired yesterday on MSNBC's Inside with Jen Psaki, and basically criticizing the efforts of Governor DeSantis and others who are trying to protect kids from the pornographic materials that are in public libraries and in public school classrooms. Play clip number 5, please.
I continue hearing people making the argument that we're doing it because we want to prevent our students from having discomfort or guilt. It's not about making kids feel uncomfortable. It's about telling other kids that they shouldn't understand their own power. It's castrating them.
Your response, Meg.
Well, I'll thank him for just making it about power, because that's exactly what this is about. It is about power. It is about them having power over our children to direct their thinking and to direct their upbringing in a way that only parents are really authorized to do. The way that this story has played out in news coverage is in that clip he's actually talking about material that is racial in nature, that is historic. The idea that we're not teaching all of history, right? That we've whitewashed history, and that it's systemically racist, the version of history that is taught in schools now. We need to go back and we need to have the 1619 Project version of history, or the Teaching Tolerance or Learning for Justice version of history. That is the true history of the United States. And so he's saying that if you don't teach that, then you don't want people who look like me to have power in society, right? And you're denying children that power. And he's using the term castration. So that's an allusion to what we were just talking about on the same-sex attraction and the idea of transgenderism. And so he's conflating a lot there. That whole segment's doing a lot of work, right? But the most important thing to take away from that is that it is about power. It's about who has the power over children. Is it going to be their parents, or is it going to be the state?
What's amazing to me that Maryland is a sanctuary state for transgender sterilization and mutilization of children. I mean, he's actually using this term. You would think that they would avoid using this term when they are wholesale in supporting this experimental surgery and drug use that essentially mutilates and castrates children. I mean, the left seems to, they don't even seem to be able to blush.
No, and I think you're seeing too some old Democrat Party politics with this. Democratic Party politics has always relied on the teachers' unions in general, and the last one still standing with the most power is the teachers' union. And you see also the LGBT lobby. They are the two, I would say, probably most powerful parts of the coalition in terms of boots on the ground and the most people that this impacts. The pro-abortion lobby is also very strong in the Democrat Party, but numbers-wise, I think that the most of the grassroots activists and the get out the vote kinds of people are in those other two segments of the party. And so they're gearing up for 2024, and this is the clarion call they're sending out.
We're finding in polling data that some of the Democratic Party's base, some of those communities, the minority communities that are still have strong roots in Orthodox religious views, don't buy into this. They, they've tolerated abortion and they haven't really pushed back too much on that. But when we look at this issue of the transgender agenda and the mutilization of their children, increasingly we're finding that this is something, for many of them, is simply a bridge too far. How far will the Democratic Party be able to take this without losing a key portion of their base?
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think that this Gallup poll is showing you that they are definitely losing part of their base with this messaging, and that the extremism of the Democratic Party, while they just take every pain to paint Republicans as ultra mega extremists and racist, book burners, what have you, the extremism on their side for the totalitarian kinds of tactics and power dynamics that they have going on, and the abortion up until birth crowd and after birth crowd, the 1619 Project people, the race essentialists, essentially. The people will talk about white Christian nationalism, but they will not talk about, Black nationalism in terms of this kind of civil rights agenda. These factions within the Democratic Party are very powerful, and they make a lot of noise. And so it'll be interesting to see, do moderates want to adopt this agenda? Is it attractive to them? And are we going to see Democrats, younger Democrats, older Democrats, are we going to see them going along with this? These polling results would say no, we may not be.
It'll be interesting. It'll also be interesting to see how Republicans respond to these trends where there's a growth in social conservative, and it's coming primarily from Republican voters. Meg Kilgannon, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony.